All right, welcome back, or welcome in for the first time, maybe for some new listeners to the Show Me Show podcast for episode 70. We have a big one. That's probably why a lot of people are here for this one. We have Brooke Grimsley, the host of ESPN's Opening Drive from 7 to 10. She's on the show. We have over an hour long interview. It was a fantastic interview. We got into some sports talk with the Cardinals and Mizzou, and just talking about her career and some other cool things that just go perfectly in line with our show. So we have that for over an hour, and then we wrap up with Tough Scene at the end of the show. So if you want to hang around for a little bit, just listen to some tough situations that happen, in the sports world and in our lives, you can do that. But we're going to send you right into the interview here, and hopefully everyone enjoys it.
No, please. No. Please, everyone be quiet.
All right, everyone. We now welcome on very special guest, Brooke Grimsley. She is the host of 101 ESPN, the Opening Drive from 7 to 10 every weekday with Randy Karraker and Carrie. I'm forgetting his last name right now, but it's Carrie. She also has a podcast with Cardinal Spanish broadcaster Polo Asensio. Brand new podcast. It's called Balk About It. I think there's 5 episodes out right now. Okay. I'm a few episodes behind. So, but welcome on. Thank you for coming on, Brooke. This is pretty awesome. So,
yeah, thank you.
How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing good. Sorry, there was like a little bit of delay. I'm doing good. Just hanging out on this Sunday, getting ready for tomorrow and with everything with the show. And thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on. Anything particular that you're getting ready for the show for tomorrow?
Oh gosh. Well, it was just a lot of Cardinals stuff going on this weekend. We're going to talk about some NFL preseason tomorrow too. Just some different things going on. I don't know if you guys saw the Brewers possibly being on the move, or at least Rob Manfred is threatening it. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow because we know that's a pretty sensitive subject here in St. Louis. So that's always good to kind of see what people feel about that. But mostly just Cardinals talk, and it's been a weird time to cover the Cardinals for sure.
Yeah, definitely. That is one of the questions is it easier to cover a team like the Cardinals when they're doing bad or when they're doing good?
I would say 100% doing well. So when I first got here in 2018, I felt like it was like a very special time. Cardinals doing okay, and then you had the Blues where they were starting their run for the Stanley Cup, being worst in the NHL to best in the NHL. And I can tell you, covering a winning championship team, whether it's Cardinals, Blues, NFL, I'll take that a million times over what we've experienced with the Cardinals and even with the Blues this season. I don't know what happened where this year the Blues and Cardinals had very similar storylines where you're seeing really bad seasons play out, but it gets rough because you don't want to really harp on all the negative stuff all the time, but that's all you get to talk about with them.
Yeah. I know, like, right at the beginning of May when they were really starting to play bad, there was a lot of talk out there that you guys could throw around, but now that it's, 3 months later, it's just kind of the same stuff that gets regurgitated.
It does. It's just like, it's like you're waiting for anything new or different to talk about, but it's just kind of the same storyline over and over again, where it feels like a very weird position. I'm sure for Cardinals fans too, where it's like used to, you're really excited looking at playoff standings. Now you don't want to look at the playoff standings because the Cardinals are not a part of it.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen that stat where it's the Cardinals haven't finished last place in the National League and since like 1919. They're like the one team that hasn't done that.
Yeah, it's been bizarre. And even talking to Randy Karraker, as you mentioned, co-host of the Opening Drive with me, as you guys are familiar, Randy Karraker is a wealth of knowledge and has been through a lot of different Cardinals ups and downs. And he has said ever since May, when we were really starting to experience a lot of this stuff with the Cardinals, that he has never seen anything like this in the Cardinals organization. And speaking to others who've been around through a lot with it too, this is just so unusual to see the Cardinals with this sort of pedigree and rich history be in the position that they're in right now.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Do you think it's an organizational thing that's maybe been building up to this point, or is this just something that it's just one of those years?
I think that it's a little bit of both, right? Because you do have Nolan Arenado and your reigning National League MVP and Paul Goldschmidt here, so it makes it strange that you're having this sort of season with those two as a part of your organization. But to me, I keep pointing back to the whole situation. If we're looking from an organizational standpoint, Mike Schilt and the way that the Cardinals let him go. I know that everybody has their thoughts and feelings on Mike Schilt and if he should have stayed or if he should have left. But just think about this, somebody who put nearly 20 years into your organization, 18 years to be exact, 18 years in your Cardinals organization from the minor league system, making it to the major league system, all of a sudden, poof, gone, right? So that's somebody who lived, breathed, ate the Cardinals way, knew that organization from the top down, and you lost that. So you lose that piece. You could even look to even further the hiring of Mike Matheny when they decided that when it came to managers, they were going to hire from within somebody who maybe didn't have as much of that managerial experience. When they started transitioning to that, getting away from the Tony La Russa types, kind of the manager that ran the organization, when they decided to shift gears to that, I think that's when you start to see a shift within the organization as well. And of course, they still had success after that. You can't be too upset about still making the playoffs, and not many teams can say that they can still do that. But I think when you lose a manager like Mike Schilt and everything he did in that organization, I think that affects the team a lot. Even if you look going into the season, not getting a starting pitcher definitely affected them. Their kind of tunnel vision on just getting a catcher, specifically Wilson Contreras this past offseason, affected them this season. And then you also lose pieces like Matt Holliday, who was supposed to be your bench, your bench coach. And then Skip Schumacher, who was also your bench coach last season, but a wealth of knowledge as well, losing him. And then losing Mike Maddox, your pitching coach. I think losing a lot of those people who, brought a lot to the organization over the years, I think you're starting to see that ripple effect really play out to this season where you're missing some of those people who were kind of integral parts in many different ways for this organization.
That is interesting. And the one guy that's been there is Mosaic, and right now they have his manager that he wants, Ali Marmol. You know him personally, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, so I like Ali. I don't really think this year is his fault. I think it's more of a roster issue, but it does sometimes feel like he's just a computer out there managing, which makes it tough to kind of, have an opinion about him. But what is his job security going into this offseason and next year?
It seems to me, I think if you look back to near the All-Star break when a lot of these questions were being asked to the Povo John Mozeliak, and he said that he believes in Ali Marmol. You even had the players at one point even sticking up for Ali Marmol when all this stuff was going on. I think that his job security is fine. I think they do. I feel like the organization sees this more as like a one-off and that they're just a few pieces away from being a little bit more successful. Um, but I think that he definitely is a younger manager. He is young. There's going to be some mistakes made. He's definitely more of an analytical approach, and so is his coaching staff. If you look at a lot of their resumes, such as like Dusty Blake, his resume is very short, and that's not a knock against him. It's just, it is what it is, right? So he's more of an analytics. Even Adam Wainwright, we had him on one day, and they called him, he said he thought he was just going to be like some stats nerd or something like that. And so it's definitely a very young and more analytically driven staff. And there's times where he has admitted a lot of these decisions that you sometimes see in games happen prior. But at the end of the day, the quote that I think sticks out the most about Ollie and his job security is John Mozeliak saying that these are essentially the guys that we gave him. It seems like this is more of a roster construction issue on how they're viewing it rather than a coaching staff. I just don't think that it would hurt this offseason to maybe add a little bit more experience to your coaching staff, especially in regard, you can keep Dusty Blake, but maybe somebody with a little bit more experience that's also a part of it. Because Dusty Blake was the pitching strategist under Maddox for just 2 years before this switch where he's taken over that role. And maybe even somebody to help the catchers too, because another part you're missing from that organization is Yadier Molina. And I got to see firsthand, very luckily, because Yachty is a very intense competitor. We know future Hall of Famer. And seeing that firsthand, he ran that organization in a lot of different ways, but specifically his relationship with the pitchers and the catchers. In spring training, there wasn't a catching coach that was leading the charge with the catchers in their specific workouts. It was Yadier Molina. And Andrew Kisner is a product of working with him. Ivan Herrera got to work with him too. And then you bring in Wilson Contreras, kind of thrust into this position this season where he had to be the heir to Yadier. I mean, it just seems like they really weren't prepared from that standpoint of what that would look like.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned the organization losing a bunch of people, but Yachty may have been the biggest loss. We're talking about like from a fan perspective and everything. But that's enough of the Cardinals.
We can keep talking about the Cardinals if you want. I know I'm used to it every day at this point. So
yeah. Well, I want to talk about you and the show and some of your career. You've had a lot of movement and a lot of new things that have happened in the past year for you. First off, how is it working with Randy? Because me and Cam, we've grown up in the St. Louis area, and ever since I started following sports, he's been, a huge name in the sports business, and he's just so iconic, I feel like, in the St. Louis area. So how is it getting to know Randy and being able to work with him every day?
Randy is everything that you would expect to be and more. So the position that I'm in right now with 101 ESPN is because of Randy. When I first came to St. Louis, I, would always, of course, as a sports reporter, in TV, you're kind of going to events more. You have to be at the pre and post game. And you wouldn't see many radio personalities there, which I get because of the schedule. But Randy would always make it a point to make sure that he was around, and he would always ask the best questions. I remember when I first got here, and I'd listen to him on the radio, because I love sports radio. But then it was his questions and the way that he would ask them. I was like, that was literally the first thing that stood out to me. And so that's how we became close, because I DM'd him. I slid in his DMs. I DM'd him and I was like, okay, I always love to learn. Just teach me your techniques with interviewing and how you're able to elicit these great responses out of people. And a lot of it has to do with his, reputation, and people know who he is and how approachable he is. He's just a wealth of knowledge and so kind. And also, being a woman in sports, sometimes you have to really battle against those stereotypes. And even with people within the industry, where it's just like, okay, this is just another chick just trying to talk about sports. But Randy, I never felt like that was ever something that he's ever thought about. He always saw me as an equal, as a peer, as a colleague, and treated me with so much respect. And when it comes to the fight too, he is amazing. Because I would listen to it when I first came here, but then experiencing it firsthand, he has perfect recall, which it's so rare to even meet somebody who has perfect recall. I try to remember things the best that I can, but sometimes I can't remember what I did yesterday or what I ate yesterday. But with Randy, if you tell him like a specific event, like, oh, do you remember when this happened? He can literally go back to that day in his mind and tell you like every little detail, what he ate that day, what the weather was like, all that stuff. It's so rare to meet somebody with perfect recall. Adam Wainwright has it. If you ask him about a start, he can remember every single one of his starts. Tony La Russa has it as well, where he can remember every specific thing about that day. And so, yeah, I guess I'm putting Randy in like a category of greats, but he is one of the greatest broadcasters that I've ever encountered. And it's so rare to meet somebody who is able to, remember everything like that and not be cocky about it. Like, I know that he gets excited on the fight when he beats people, but he doesn't take it from an approach of, I know more than you. It's, I like to share this information and history with you.
Yeah. Speaking of the fight, how awkward is it when you know the listener is cheating by looking up the answers when facing against Randy?
There's been times too where some people I think have cheated and still don't beat him, and so that makes it even funnier. We've like talked about like, do we need to start FaceTiming people so we can like see what they're doing? But yeah, there's been times like I think there was one when I first started in March. that was like soaring through it, but we could hear like keyboard typing in the background. And so then we were like, what do we do about this? And eventually he did lose, but still, I think it's always funnier when I can tell somebody's cheating because like you can hear like whispering in the background or something, and they somehow still lose anyways, and that's always hilarious.
Yeah. You mentioned how Randy, like you're talking about, not just another girl in sports talking sports, and I think that's interesting that you point that out, because I feel like Smallman, when she left, she also made it an emphasis to point that out about Randy too, like how he treated her just as like an equal and just as somebody who loved talking about sports, and that's why they were pretty good together too, and it I can see how wanting to work with somebody like that, especially as a female, like that's a pretty comforting thing. And obviously he's awesome too. So I thought that was interesting that you pointed that out, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, especially I feel like as a female sometimes, and Michelle and I, we've talked a lot, and she has a big job promotion coming up too, where she'll be doing the morning show for ESPN National. So she'll be actually, her show will be going in before us. But it's really hard. Her and I have talked about that a lot, especially being a female in sports or a female in a male dominated industry, because I hear this from other women who, work in fields like that, where it feels like you have to, do more than sometimes your male counterparts. And you still, no matter what you do, still sometimes will not satisfy those people. And you just have to realize it is what it is. But with personalities like Randy, where they're looking to uplift women and they understand that it matters having women in that space and to be able to speak, because, women enjoy sports. If you look around at a sporting event, there are women there. And it's so crazy to think that that's like a wild concept that women might be interested in sports. And so it's really refreshing, because I can't tell you how many times throughout my career that there's men that I've worked with, and even, just people who listen or view you, that no matter what you do, they're just like ready to write you off just because they can't get past the fact that you're a female, and that there's absolutely no way. Like my favorite comment is, well, you never played the sport. Okay, then there's so many men who commentate on sports who have never played sports even. Like, what does that have to do with anything? It's so weird, because I wasn't raised that way, where there was, you have to be a gender to participate in sports, to pay attention to sports. And so it's really refreshing to be around someone like Randy, where he empowers you and lifts you up, because you would think that in nowadays that you wouldn't have to encounter that as a female, but it still is something that definitely happens.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up. Like, women enjoy sports too, and I don't know what the disconnect is there, why people think that maybe, they shouldn't be involved. Maybe it's because of the playing thing, like some of the main sports like baseball and football. I mean, women don't play that. So I guess that's where the disconnect is. I don't know, but that is interesting that you bring that up, and I assume that's been a challenge in your career that you've had to overcome, and just another, step in the already hard to get into sports media business.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and it's a part of it. That's what I always tell people, even, other than females, if, anybody asks me for advice, I'll tell people that you're never going to satisfy every person you encounter in your life, right? So when I was younger, especially when I first started out in TV and I was sports anchoring, I would really let the comments get to me. And that was in small market Arkansas. I was in Fort Smith, Fayetteville. It was a split TV market, and covering the Razorbacks. So everybody like lives, eats, breathes Razorbacks. It's hog country down there. And I would let those comments get to me. But then at the end of the day, I just remembered that I'm not going to make everybody happy. I can only control what I can control. I can't just one day snap somebody out of their sexist ideas of what they think a female should and shouldn't be doing. And me just having that conversation with them isn't going to change that. All I can focus on is the ones who do support me and just continue to grow. And it's worked out, because if I listened to all those comments, I would have been done with this industry a long time ago if I let all that stuff get to me.
Yeah, that's I'm glad you didn't either. So
Yeah. It's worked out.
yeah, definitely.
So
Has there been any like person that you've looked up to as an inspiration, or what's the word, a role model?
Mm-hmm. A lot of different people. I've had a lot of great mentors over the years. Specifically in Nashville, I remember, not like you saw some women on the sidelines, like Erin Andrews was really becoming big when I was in high school. But I was never really that infatuated with being on the sidelines. I was more of like, I listened to sports talk radio. And so Dawn Davenport was one of the first female sports anchors in Nashville, Tennessee. And now she's in radio, and she's always been somebody that I idolized, because it was when seeing her was like the first instance of like, oh, I can actually pursue a career in this, and people will take me seriously in this. And so I would say her. Audra Martin is somebody who's she's with Valley Sports North now, covering the Twins, and she was one of my mentors when I was in college and with an internship there. And I've had a lot of great people, including Maurice Drummond over at Channel 4. He was the sports director when I came here to St. Louis, and now he's on the morning show. He was a huge help and inspiration for me. Like, as we're talking about, Randy, somebody who, supported women. Maurice was the exact same way, or is the exact same way. I've just been really lucky to, have a lot of people who have been great support systems over the years and just really helped me. And I don't know, I just always, even to this day, like I'll still scout people out that I can ask advice from. So there's a lot of people that I've been able to kind of reach out to that have been very supportive.
Speaking of people that, have good personalities and are really good people, Adam Wainwright, we've long said that he would be our dream guest, I think, to have on this podcast. No offense to you, but
Yeah.
Adam Wainwright he'd be way better. But you get to have him on, is it every week?
Yeah.
Every Wednesday?
Yeah.
I mean, that has to be cool to have a guy like that. And I mean, does he make the job any easier and just make your life any easier, really?
Yeah, well, Adam is great to talk to. So having, covered a lot of different sports, you never know what you're going to get with a lot of the athlete personalities. Sometimes a lot of them are very quiet, or they don't have much to say, or, they just don't, they get kind of like nervous going in interviews. Adam Wainwright is obviously a media pro. And
Yeah.
so that's why we've seen him do broadcasts. He's just very natural at it. And he does make things easier. I will say, though, he's very sharp and very aware of things. So sometimes you have to be very like cognizant of like what you're asking him, because he will also be very attuned to if he thinks that you're trying to spin something on him, because he's been on the bad side of media too, right? Where, maybe somebody's misconstruing his words, and that happens all the time, right? Where, you say a quote, people can't hear the tone of it. They're not watching you say it physically. And so then they just see that quote and they're like, you said what? And then it turns into a giant story. So he's very aware of that. So he's one of those people where you get a great answer, but you definitely have to go in making sure you're asking it properly. And that sounds weird, right? Because that's literally your job. If you work in sports broadcasting, is to know what you're asking, but you have to make sure you frame it in a way where that he won't take it as like a slight against him sometimes, because he knows that sometimes that you'll try to, I don't know, like try to elicit a certain response. He's so aware of like what you're trying to ask him, where it's like you have to like really frame it in a certain way so that he knows that you're not trying to pull one over on him, because he's been a part of that a lot too.
Yeah. He just seems like a guy that can make the best out of a bad situation. Like, I remember, I think it was about 2 years ago, and it was when you were still working for Channel 4, and somebody on, like, the headline typed up, instead of Cardinals, they put Blues, sign Adam Wainwright,
Oh, and
and
that
he
was
did,
not
like, that
me.
whole
That
thing.
was Doug Vaughn. Yeah, that was that. I want to be clear. I was on vacation that day, but that's what I'm saying is he pays attention to everything. That's why, when he went off social media for a little bit and then he came back, he really does pay attention to, how people respond to him and what they're saying about him. And that's why this season has been just so rough for him. And we're very appreciative that he still comes on, because the thing is that a lot of athletes, or even people in general, imagine like, you have a tough game, or you had like a really tough day, and then you have to go into your locker and face a bunch of media members. Like, there's nothing worse than that. Or you have to wake up early in the morning and talk to Randy, Carey, and I were like, so what happened with that last start? Like, a lot of people aren't going to have fun doing that, but he uses media in a lot of ways and social media as a way to talk to the fans, and he sees that as a resource. And so it's been very great for him to be very open and honest about how this season has been affecting him, because I think that's important for people to hear too, that athletes are humans. I think sometimes people forget that they are, and I know that sounds weird because of course we know that they're humans, but I think that a lot of people really idolize athletes to the point where they think they're superhuman and they can handle everything, right? Which they can, and I know they make a lot of money. But sometimes some of the comments, they do get to them because they're human beings. And I think it's been great that Waino's been very open about how those comments have affected him, so that people know, even with somebody with as much as he's been through, in his playing career, he's been through many highs and many lows. He still can be affected by that. And I think it's important for people to understand that they are humans at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's definitely a guy I can see that from, like, the human side. It's a tough time for everyone, I feel like, with how he's pitching, but there's some guys that, like, it's fun to make fun of him, but he's not one of them. It feels wrong to make fun of him. So
yeah.
And how difficult is that? So, like, you guys still have him on every week, and you just talked about how you really have to kind of, not that you're watching what you say, but in a way you kind of are, so that he doesn't feel slighted. But, he's had his struggles this year, and you guys still have to talk about that. How difficult is it, whether it's just Wainwright or other players, when you do kind of have to talk about the downs of their careers and certain points of their careers, and just recent stretches of games where, they've had trouble, but you got to talk about it still. And how do you do that? Like, how does that feel when you're talking to them, and how do you do that without being disrespectful?
I think that it's a lot in the way of how you approach it and how you know them, right? So luckily, being around the clubhouse for the past 5 years around the Cardinals, like, building that rapport with them where they know that I'm not trying to get anything out of them and I'm not trying to put them in a bad position. I just want to get their comment. A technique that I learned when I was in college from one of my mentors is that sometimes it's the conversations you have off camera with those athletes. So, when you go to the clubhouse, they have pre and post game, but pre-game is usually a good time just to chat with the athletes. Of course, like, ask them questions you need to, but then you put away the camera and you just ask them about maybe their lives or what they have going on. And so that they understand that you also see them, that human side. And so they know that you kind of build that reputation with them, that you aren't trying to get something out of them and use it against them, that you are just trying to tell their story and let them, because a media member, in my opinion, is supposed to be a vessel to the public to answer questions, right? Even though now I'm on sports talk radio, I'm not trying to tell you how to feel about something. Of course, now I'm going to voice my opinion, but I'm going to let the athlete too. Back when I was reporting, I would let them speak directly, basically, to the fans. And so just building that rapport, I think, is very important, which I think has worked in my favor with Adam Wainwright and some of the other athletes too, because they've known me over the years and they know I'm not trying to put them in a bad position with a question or something. And it's hard because, it's not like I would consider any of them friends or anything like that, but you get to know these guys over the years, and it's really tough because there's that personal aspect that we're talking about, right? Where, of course, I don't want to be the person at their locker after a terrible game being like, well, what happened there? But it's just part of it, and they understand it too. Like, I think one that was really interesting is the Tyler O'Neill situation. So even prior to this season, when I came here, covered Tyler a lot, built like a good talking relationship with him where he knew that he could trust me. And he was very honest with me. There was times, like, especially during arbitration last season, where things got really bad. And I went to him, I was like, hey, I know that this is not fun to talk about, but are you willing to talk about this? Is it okay if I ask you about arbitration? Is it okay if I ask you about your injuries and stuff like that? And he'd say yes. And so I feel like that's where kind of that balance is, where they understand that you're not just out to get them. Because I have seen too with some reporters where it's really clear that they're looking for just negatives, and the athletes sniff that out too, right? Like
They're looking
they'll
for
never.
like a talking point
Oh yeah. So I'll
headline.
give you guys, yeah, I'll give you guys a quick example that's not Cardinals related, but this was something that like opened my eyes when I was an intern in Nashville, Tennessee. I got to cover the Titans, and there was a writer there that was well known for just only writing like basically like pieces very negative against athletes and against the organization. Like he was just always looking for the negative and negative. And sometimes there's definitely, especially with the Titans, there's negative to talk about, right? And so, but it's about that balance where, athletes know you're not trying to just, pull one over on them. And he wrote a piece about a quarterback that was drafted that year. And he walks into the locker room the next day, and one of the O linemen who has a well-known podcast now, one of the O
Taylor.
linemen started screaming. He's like, get that MFer out of here. Get that MFer out of here. You're not going to write about my quarterback like that, and like all this different kind of stuff. And so it put him sometimes in a really tough position with the athletes, because then their guard's up with you, right? They're not going to want to talk to you about anything. And in some cases like that, they're going to be very angry at you. And so I think that it's kind of like finding that balance, and it's tough, especially going back to Wayno this year, everything, but he has been so open and honest. And if you were able to listen to some of our questions about it, Randy, the way that he approaches things, because Randy leads the charge with everything, right? His approach is, we're welcoming them into our house, and you're not going to be hostile towards a guest that you're welcoming into your house, right? So we tried to kind of take that approach with them, and not as much of like what are you doing? What's going on? Are you going to retire? Like, that kind of approach, because he's a guest in your house, essentially, is how we approach these interviews.
He doesn't have to come on the show, so.
Exactly. Yeah, he doesn't. And also you have to think about that too from, a standpoint of, you also don't want it to be the last time he comes on your show too. And some people have their shtick, like I was telling you about that writer back in Tennessee. His shtick was to be that way. There's some media personalities where that's their personality, where they're just going to burn bridges. I just don't think that sometimes I don't take that approach, because I think that you burn a lot of bridges and there won't be any bridges left for you. So
Yeah. It's a weird approach, I guess.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Titans, so you're still a Titans fan, right?
Yes.
Have you met Will Levis?
I have not met Will Levis yet. No.
Interesting. Okay.
Not yet. No. We'll have not met him yet.
I got you on that one then.
It's very interesting. Huh?
Is it U1, U0?
You met Will Levis?
Sort of, kind of. In the Country Music Hall of Fame, I went up and dapped him up, said hello to him.
Oh, okay. Oh, I forgot you guys went to that. That's interesting that he was out and about there taking in Tennessee, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bunch of. Well, it was like the whole team was there pretty much. Just a very random thing, but.
Derrick Henry was there? Now, Derrick Henry, that I would love to meet Derrick Henry.
He was not there. I don't think it was like the well-known players. I think it was a lot of rookies and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
Because there wasn't anyone else that I recognized. So.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
So
I said ask that.
I had a question. So when you cover a city, you said obviously you had to split time in like the Fayetteville area and Nashville as well. When you cover a city though, and you talk to all these players and stuff, and you, like you said, you build these relationships. You don't want to burn any bridges. Because you're still a sports fan, Brooke. How tough is it though to not be able to get like some of your takes off, some of your opinions? That you kind of just have to hold back, or maybe only off air, obviously, and stuff like that. But stuff that you almost wish that you could talk about that you just don't want to. Does that ever take not a toll, but just like, man, I wish I could talk about this if this was a little bit more national or whatever. But just the effect of covering a city.
Yeah, and And every city's different, right? Like there's things that that's why I think it's important that you get to know the city and like the fan base, because if you compared like New York, Philly media compared to St. Louis media, compared to Nashville media, there's a reason why there's like a different approach, right? Because media is supposed to be reflective of the fan base. And so Philly media is aggressive with their questions. They're not going to hold back. Same thing with New York. They're not going to hold back with anything because that's how the fan base is. I think with St. Louis, the whole reason I wanted to come here is because I knew, even though growing up in Nashville, I knew how passionate St. Louis fans were and how much they love sports and also how well versed they were. So, in Nashville, of course, we have the Titans and we have the Predators and all that kind of stuff, but it's not what the city's known for. So the city is known for Music City. Like you said, Luke, you went to the Country Music Hall of Fame, or they call it like the National Music Hall of Fame now, still country, but that's the main priority there. And I knew coming to St. Louis that it was a passionate sports fan base where people know their stuff. And as a sports broadcaster, that's amazing to talk about. But I think that this is also a fan base that really wants like positives. And that's why this year is just so weird, because fans here want things to be positive about, because everybody lives, eats, breathes the Cardinals here, right? Like it's a national holiday on opening day. And then even with the Blues too, and you add City SC, and it's tough because, kind of going back to building that rapport with the athletes, there's definitely some things across my entire career, not just here, that I have found out, but I knew that I just had to sit on it because it wouldn't exactly be beneficial for me to put that information out there. If anything, it'd be something that would, get me more in trouble, where I wouldn't be able to get more interviews, or, in trouble with a team or an organization or something like that. Like sometimes you have to balance what needs to go out there. Like, of course, if a crime's committed, then that's a different story. Then that needs to be told. But, there's certain things, like maybe a player injury or certain things like that you just kind of have to sit on. It's information you come across through sources that you have to sit on because it's not going to be beneficial to put that out into the public. But there's times too where there's definitely things that I have thought about, over the years with different teams and organizations where it's like, man, I wish I could really go in on this take, but I just know that it's not something that is necessary. It would be too personal of an opinion of my thoughts on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing that I have to ask here. So would you call it self-proclaimed president of the Lars Nootbaar fan club, or was that given to you by Carrie?
Randy and Carrie and Rocky, I think it was like a joint effort on that. Lars is obviously a fantastic athlete. He's super nice. Literally, what you see in games on TV, he is such a nice person. He's also started working with Adam Wainwright's Big League Impact. So I kind of see him and Tommy Edman kind of spearheading, continuing being the Cardinals' ties to Adam Wainwright and the foundation after this season. And I forgot, I don't even know how we even got into it, but I've always been like a fan of Lars. And so that was weird for me. Like when we were talking about like holding the personal aspects out, where it was something like fun. And typically I would 100% not say, oh, this player's really cool, like out in public, especially as on the TV side of things. But in radio, I'm learning to kind of embrace like my personality a little bit more and be a little bit more open and have fun with people about things, because Lars Nootbaar has become a fan favorite. And so we thought it would be really funny if I also like spearheaded that. And also with him I'm part Japanese. And so him, being the first Japanese American to be on Team Japan was a huge deal. So then it just like caught on like wildfire after that. And then I created the Nutty Neuters of Newt Nation. And that name has sometimes fallen flat with people, but I still think it's hilarious. So I'm going to continue to say it anyways. So
you got to be careful in what context you use it, but
but to me that's hilarious, right? Because like some people get it and some people don't. We had somebody text in the other day where they were just like, Brooke, don't you know what neutered means? And I was like, yeah, that's what's funny about it, because he's neutering the competition. What's not funny about that? The Nutty Neuters of Newt Nation, like that's amazing. So I
What's
know
that
we
acronym? The
the Nutty Neuters of
just
Nation. I mean,
four ends.
yeah, yeah. That I don't know if that will
Nutty.
land well, but
Yeah, maybe not.
but we even ran it by Adam Wainwright, and he was even a little hesitant on the name, but he thought it was funny. So, uh, but it's really cool because it's kind of helped me when I'm introducing myself more to this radio audience, connect with people. And I can't tell you like how many people have come up to me and they're like, "Oh my God, I love the Nutty Neuters. Like I'm a Nutty Neuter." And I've had people like give me like some of his playing cards and I mean like or and all that different kind of stuff. Just like anything related to Lars, they'll bring up to me or they'll like give me something that's related to that. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is fun. So and also I've told Lars about it, so he didn't think I'm like a total weirdo for this. That
Yeah,
this was all more of like a gag, and that it's not anything to be concerned about. Please don't report me. So
it's a bit.
he would be like, why is Brooke like spearheading my fan club? What is going on?
She even had the name and everything. uh, you mentioned the text line. What's the wildest thing that maybe you probably can't read like some of the wild ones on the air, but what's one that's just like really caught you off guard and been like, whoa?
There's always some interesting ones that come in. I would say on the text line, people are very respectful for the most part, which I was kind of surprised about. But every once in a while, I think there was one the other day where this guy just really, so talking about Lars Nootbaar, hates Lars Nootbaar. And so he just sent me like a flurry of texts where he's like, you're just being a fan. You're not seeing things clearly. First of all, I'm being sarcastic more than half the time of when I'm talking about like Lars or things like that. Like I've also talked about when he's not doing well. Like it's more, some people miss the sarcasm. It's like you
Yeah.
realize it's more like sarcasm takes like another step of intelligence for certain people sometimes. And he was upset. He hates Lars Nootbaar, hates Tommy Edman, which I've talked about Tommy Edman too. And then also Eddie doesn't like me either, and I need to shut up and listen to the boys. And I was just like, okay, all right, let's
And
chill
that's where
out
it comes from. Yeah.
yeah, but other than that one guy, everybody's been pretty nice. But I was like, there's a little bit of a theme here. So you don't like Lars, half Japanese. You don't like Edmund, half
Yeah.
Korean. You don't like me, part Japanese. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. You can tell where his preferences lie or something.
Yeah. So but other than that, we've had people just send in other random things. But most of the people are, pretty engaging, get in on the jokes, all that stuff. So I haven't had anything too wild just yet.
Nice to have a little club almost of just people
Yeah.
that are going to be respectful and stuff. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
One more thing here before we end this. How much have you scouted Mizzou football for this year?
How much have I scouted Mizzou? Not
Well,
too much.
okay.
I do know some of like kind of the obvious things that, there seems to be more of a situation with Brady Cook. He's kind of their starting quarterback, kind of not. You have Sam Horn coming into the picture, and then Luther Burden, who I'm glad he's staying. I didn't know. I think the NIL helps like a lot. I didn't know how long he would stay at Mizzou because when I saw him at East St. Louis, I got to cover him in high school. I mean, he is a freaking stud. I mean, an absolute stud. So I'm glad that he's staying with Mizzou, buying into that program. It seems like there's going to be a lot of interesting things to watch with them this season because last season, to me, their biggest bright spot was their defense. And so
Yes.
you're able to keep around. Yes, exactly. So you're able to keep around your coach defensively, but now you're going to have that new element with Eli Drinkwitz where he's kind of handing over the reins with the play calling, but not really, with this new offensive coordinator coming in. So I'm going to be interested to see how that is because I think this is a pretty big year for Eli Drinkwitz.
Oh yeah, definitely. Do you think he's the guy?
Do I think he's the guy? Oh
Yeah.
God. Put me on the spot here. Because Eli definitely pays attention to a lot of things. As he likes to say on the social media, on the Twitter, he definitely pays attention to things. I think for right now, he is the guy. I think that Mizzou has invested a lot in him. He's done I think from what I have heard, they're very happy with the energy that he's brought and the energy he's brought recruiting wise, and also the way that he's really spearheaded a lot of this NIL stuff. I think they are happy with him at the moment. And so it'll just be interesting, though, to see how things progress offensively, because I think that's where things have gotten sour, maybe with him and the fan base, and it's the SEC, right? I got to cover, Arkansas when they fired Brett Bielema, and that was interesting. And then I was here when they fired Barry Odom. And so I feel like the SEC coaching wise, unless you're in one of those big programs like say a Georgia or Alabama, your job's consistently on the line. You're consistently in the hot seat. You're always having to prove yourself. This year just feels especially big for him because they're kind of, not them, but I would say that he's letting go of the reins in a lot of his play calling, which was supposed to be one of the big reasons why they brought him in, right? Like that was something that they talked about, his play calling abilities and his ability to do that. And so it's very interesting that now you're going to have this new offensive coordinator introduced that's kind of going to take the reins, but not really, because we had him on, I think, earlier in March, and I brought that up to him, and I think that was definitely a little bit more touchy of a subject where it's like he's not going to give over full play calling.
Yeah, very weird, but
it is. Yeah. But I agree with you. I think it is practically make or break, and by make or break for Mizzou, it pretty much just means this year. I think he probably needs to win at least 8 games. And, you talked about Luther, and we have a lot of guys coming back on defense, which is huge. And Blake Baker, obviously, was signing him an extension was big. And you said you got to cover Luther when he was in high school, and he was a stud in high school. And obviously, they just threw him onto the scene last year. And, that's tough when you just thrown into SEC football. I remember when I went and saw him, and when you get to the college level, you can still be pretty small compared to some of the other SEC guys. And but I think he looks bigger this year. They still have a really good wide receiver room, even with losing Lovett. And I think the big thing me and Luke talk about on this show quite a bit is, Brady Cook struggled a lot at times last year, and we talked about that, but he played hurt, and that was another thing. It's a couple of times now Drink has played quarterbacks that have been hurt, but we kind of saw that maybe when Cook is a little bit more healthy in that Arkansas game at the end of the season last year, where he had like 100 rushing yards and 150 passing yards before the end of the first half. If we can get more of that, then who knows, maybe we could see kind of like a 2013 James Franklin kind of season with Mizzou, and see if things take off a little bit, because they do have the offensive guys. Obviously, they struggled up front a little bit last year too, but they have the defense, and that's what Brooke just pointed out. That's what I'm pointing back out as well. They have some dudes that are going to be playing on Sundays next year, and I'm really excited. I also think that Drink has a great opportunity to win a lot of games this year and be the guy for a while after winning a bunch of games. So I just hope it all turns out well.
I do too. Yeah, of course, because his rise has been so quick, right? And when it comes to the college system, it's weird because, in Arkansas, he was a high school coach, and then he was under Gus Malzahn and kind of his protege a little bit. And so that's where a lot of people bring up the play calling abilities and the way that he's able to do that. Like maybe he was able to get some of that from Gus. And it's just interesting how quick he's been able to rise through the ranks. And, it's been interesting to watch, because he's definitely a strong personality too, because he's not afraid to, throw quotes back into your face, or, bring up, different things like the latest headline where he's talking about NIL and all that stuff, which was actually a great point that he made that I think kind of helped with him and getting more recognition in the SEC and more of like a voice, because it's something that a lot of the coaches agreed on. It's going to be interesting to watch, because even with Brady Cook, I covered him in high school too, Chaminade grad. And as you mentioned too, he's not afraid to use his feet and his speed, but it felt like there was at times too Brady Cook last season, that throwing ability, that arm ability was not fully there yet. So I'm hoping to see that develop, because when you have a guy like Luther Burden, who's a stud, and believe me, when over at East St. Louis, I know it's different in high school, but still, like, the way that Luther can make plays when you get him the ball, even when there was times where Brady would just chuck it a little bit and it wasn't a great pass. I'm sure you guys saw that last season, and Luther would still make something out of it. Love it as well. I would like to see him maybe develop that arm a little bit more, so that'd be interesting. But I'm also interested in seeing Sam Horn, because I feel like we've heard so much about him over the years, where I would be interested to see what he looks like.
Have you seen him throw at all?
Sam? No, not yet. What does it look like?
It's weird looking.
That's not good.
Yeah, I mean, it works as long as it's fine. It's just a weird throwing motion that he has, but
Okay.
But it does look sick because he wears number 21. That looks pretty sweet.
that's the weirdness.
I will, and like I just said, obviously, Cook also had a torn labrum last year too, so you also wonder about that. And it also took a while. Like I know you just said, by the end of the year, yeah, Luther was starting to make some more plays, but it took him a while. I remember early on during the season, because he just got kind of thrown to the wolves a little bit, 5-star, go make plays, dropping slants early on in the season and stuff like that. It just takes a little bit to get used to, but 4 year of SEC experience, full off season, I think, yeah, this is a great opportunity for him to break out. And obviously Lovett had that opportunity last year after his first year as well. So yeah.
You went to Middle Tennessee, right? For
Yes.
college?
Yes.
Where are your allegiances going to lie on September the 9th?
It's gonna be Blue Raiders, baby. I already picked the Blue Raiders to do it, because haven't you seen the history between the Blue Raiders and Mizzou too in the past?
It's not great. It's not great for Mizzou.
I'm just saying, for whatever reason, MTSU rises to the occasion sometimes against these bigger schools. So I don't know. I'm going to have to root for my Blue Raiders. Coach Stockstill, as we're talking about figures and people who have helped me along the way, I worked for MTSU's football team, and Coach Stockstill is still there, and his son is the quarterback's coach over there too, and they are fantastic. Coach Stock is amazing and was huge, always cheering me on throughout my career too, and always believed in me. So, of course, I'm always going to root for Coach Stock and the Blue Raiders.
That's valid though. You have an excuse, I feel like.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if Drake would like that excuse or not, but
Well, it's a good one though. It's a good one to have.
yeah.
You
I'll be
went
like
there.
the only person showing up at blue there. They're like, what? They're like, MTSU has fans? No.
The alumni.
They're still Conference USA, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if they were trying to move to the Fun Belt or not. I think they maybe tried.
They were in the Sun Belt prior.
They were before. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All
Interesting.
right. How good are you at Twitter?
At the Twitter machine, sometimes good, sometimes not great. I got to get better at it lately. I think I'm still getting used to the mornings, and then I take long naps, sometimes too long during the day, where I forget things are happening. Like I missed Luca Baker getting called up the other day because I was taking a 5-hour nap. So I missed that opportunity, but sometimes I'm decent at the Twitter machine.
Yeah. I'm looking right now.
It's not called Twitter anymore. It's called X.
Yeah, that's true. I still call it Twitter though. It's hard to
took the
distinguish from
Bluebird.
X.
Yeah.
You don't have a pinned tweet though, I noticed.
Is that something that the younger generation does now? Should I be doing that?
I don't know. I just
Answer
feel
your question, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, look, I'm still trying to be with it so that I'm not behind on all the trends. So tell me why I need a pinned tweet. What does that do?
It's when people click on your account to see who you are, and it's the first tweet that they see. It's right there at the front. So usually it's one that, I don't know, represents you or one of your biggest tweets or something.
Okay. I need to go back.
It's not something that you can force. It just kind of has to happen, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's my pinned tweet. So
Okay. Now I
I don't
gotta
know what
think.
mine is.
Well, so you're saying that you're gonna tell me I don't have a pinned tweet and you don't know what yours is?
But it's my All-Star prediction that it probably needs to be updated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I noticed that you are getting better at Twitter. Like when I started following you a few years ago, you wouldn't tweet very often, but I don't know if that comes with, part of the job of the radio host that you just have to be more, locked in on
Yeah,
Twitter, but I
I
have
try.
noticed that.
Yeah, I do try to be. It's just sometimes I have to take breaks from it because people I feel like are very angry sometimes where it's not the vibe sometimes where I just want to hop on the app and see a bunch of angry people. So it especially like when we were talking about Adam Wainwright, like some of the comments are just like it, and I get people being upset, but then like when some people take it to a next level, like where you're like tweeting his family members, you're like,
Yeah.
or should I say Xing his family members or different things like that. I'm like, okay, this is a little extreme. Like I love sports. I would never let it affect my emotions to where I'm tweeting a grown man like
About
that
his
he's
family.
yeah.
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 Yeah, that's a little weird. Uh,
Yeah.
I got two more questions. The first one is, what time do you get up in the morning? If you have to like be live on the air at 7 a.m., that has to be an early alarm that you have set.
Yeah, so we have to, well, we don't have to because sometimes Randy's very chill about things, but I try to be there by 6:30 and I try to wake up at 5:15 every morning because we've introduced YouTube cameras. So I'm trying to be a little bit more aware of where I don't want to look like I rolled right out of bed because now everybody's just staring at you on YouTube. Um, and so I try to get up at 5:15 just about every day, but for days that I wear hats and not putting in a lot of effort, then I'm like waking up at 6.
Okay.
So there's like a big difference there, right? Like it's
Yeah. Yeah. 6
and
is
then,
early, but like 5:15 is it's just too early. I feel like.
yeah, and then my fiance, who and my fiance, he gets tired of me because I'm not one of those people that wakes up with one alarm. I wake up with like multiple alarms. So it takes me about like 6 alarms before I'm actually out of bed. So it's always
A
interesting.
great a great cheat code for this, because I'll get up early too sometimes to lift in the morning. If you plug in your phone away from your bed at night and then you set the alarm, then you have to get out of bed to turn it off, and
That's a good point.
it it, it just leaves you up because you actually have to leave the bed. So I've been doing that. That's a great way to conquer the multiple alarms.
Walk
I need
across
to
the room, maybe open the curtains, get some
Yeah.
light in. Well, at 5:15, there's no light probably. But
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the other thing is like I just want to stay in, but that's a good point. I'll need to try that because everything I'm doing now, because I'll start like doing math that early in my head in the morning, where I'm just like, okay, if I hit the snooze for 10 more minutes, then I can still do my hair. It's like that every single morning. It's just unnecessary. I just need to get up and get going.
it's the battle with yourself.
Yeah.
My last question here. I've always wondered this. So you obviously talk sports for 3 hours. Occasionally, you'll talk some other things. How often do you talk about or just have sports conversations outside of work?
Well, I would say like kind of a decent amount, especially if I'm going out in public or if I know I'm going to like a work meeting or different things like that, then I know I'm going to have a lot of those conversations. But my fiance is not like the biggest sports fan, and so we don't take deep dives into things. It's kind of nice in that way because my job is talking about sports and I've been engulfed in sports my whole life. And so it's kind of nice being able to not have to talk about that all the time after doing it essentially all day. So he likes sports and he keeps up with things. Like he'll listen, to the radio show and like pick up on things. And then when I'm watching the games at night, then he'll be like, "Oh, you guys talked about this," or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of nice because then I can decompress a little bit from it, where not everything is revolving around sports. But with my dad, that's like how our relationship is sports talk. So he listens to he's paying attention to a lot of Cardinals, my mom too. And so every time I talk to them, then it's even with my dad and my mom, it's like, wait, what's going on with the Cardinals with this? And then I'll ask him what's going on with the Titans because he listens to sports talk radio in Nashville too. But I would say a lot of my life is talking about sports, but it's nice every once in a while just having those moments of like nothing. Like when I was single, I would literally go days without talking to people on my off days. And it was great. It was just nothing. I could just, be in silence sometimes.
Yeah. It is interesting how you bring that up. Like your fiance, I've known him my whole life. He's my cousin.
Oh, we're
Before we met
revealing it? I
you,
didn't know if you were going to reveal it or not. I didn't
no,
want to.
I'll reveal it if that's fine with him. But he nothing about sports. I mean, he barely knew who Molina was. That's how bad it was. So it was certainly weird to see that dynamic, but I mean it works. So
Yeah,
Cam,
well,
do you
he
have any more
liked
questions?
used to like NFL. Like he used to be a huge Brett Favre fan. Like we still in the house like have some stuff that he and Danny had, his twin brother. He seems to be another one of those fans that once the NFL left here, then he just could care less, is what I've gathered from him. But like I said, it makes it nice because there was times, and then I'll shut up after this. But there was times where, when I was dating guys, when we were talking about being intimidated or, thinking that I, wouldn't be that interested in sports, there were so many guys that were like, "Oh, this is cool, like dating a girl that's in sports." And then they would get intimidated by it where it's like, "Oh, you can't just come drop everything to hang out with me." I'm like, "No, it's a game going on this weekend that I got to go cover. That's just how it is." Or they'd be like, "Oh, you have to be in a locker room with guys." I'm like, "Yeah, that's part of it. Like it's a professional thing. Like there's nothing weird going on there." But it was just interesting because David, even though he's not a big sports fan, was the first one that was not intimidated by that and was very supportive and understood that this was, what I've always wanted to do and was very, very supportive of that.
That's interesting. Well, thanks for coming on. Cam, do you have any more questions? I should probably ask that.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. This has been really awesome. This is really cool.
Thank you.
This is a lot of really interesting stuff that like when we're listening like later on to the show in the morning, it's like, oh, she talked about this, oh, stuff like that. That's really cool. One last question. What's your prediction for the Titans record this year?
Oh God. I don't know. I'm like trying to be like the fan of me wants to be really excited with the addition of DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry, hopefully fully healthy. But I also know how that works with running backs in the NFL, and we saw last season how they affected things. And I know Ryan Tannehill is not splashy, but I think he's average. It's just playoffs is what freaks me out. I don't know. I maybe 7 wins. I don't know. I have no idea. I just want them to do well and not disappoint me again.
Just have fun. Just have fun playing.
Yeah. Just have fun. And please don't disappoint me. I can always tell too, my dad being such a big Titans and Tennessee fan, I can tell how he feels about things based on what he wears because he only wears either Titans or Tennessee Vols stuff. And so there's been some times in recent years where he's not wearing either one, if that tells you how things have been going in Tennessee.
It's kind of like for us in St. Louis here. Like right now, we're not wearing anything. Something to root for, though. If Will Levis wins Rookie of the Year, I think it was, I'm doing mayonnaise in the coffee. So
I don't think that was real.
I don't think we'll have to worry about that.
Right?
But
like he was joking, right? Like there's no way that was real. I saw that, and I was like, maybe that's why he wasn't picked higher in the draft. I don't know. The mayo's a little weird.
Yeah, it is a little, just a tad. It's different.
Sauce.
And then one thing we ask all the guests: do you have any questions for us?
Questions for you guys. Let me think. Okay, so you guys do a lot of Mizzou talk, Cardinals talk too, Blues talk or no?
I have to force him to do Cardinals talk. He's a fan, but
are you more of a Mizzou fan?
I'm more of basically I'm just a fair weather. I'll flat out say fair weather Cardinal fan. If they're punting on the season like they did this year, I will also punt on the season. And I'm locked into football for right now. I'm a big football fan and NBA, college basketball, but yeah, those are my things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cam is the football and NBA guy, and I'm kind of baseball and college basketball. But Blues kind of get overshadowed, especially in the year that they just had. But we do try to talk about them when there's big news. So
okay, so let me think. So I'll do two separate questions. Cam, Mizzou prediction for this year record-wise, and then Luke, how about you say how many losses you think the Cardinals are going to get to when the season ends?
I'm going to look up their record right now.
Okay, I think Mizzou is actually going to go like 7-5, and then actually win their bowl game 8-5, and then they'll let Drink stick around for a little bit longer. I just think they have a great opportunity. I'm not going to say it's going to happen because if obviously Mizzou football. It's like we have Middle Tennessee on the schedule throughout history. That's you look at that, that's a clear W, but not really when you're a Mizzou fan. Losses to teams like UTEP over the years and stuff like that, just growing up with that. But they have a great opportunity to be 5-0 going into the LSU game this year. And I think if they can do that, then the sky might actually be the limit because then Big Mo's on your side. And obviously you're probably not going to beat Georgia, but if you go 5-0 going into that LSU game, then pretty much anything can happen. But I do think they'll go about 8-5.
Let me look at their schedule real quick. So you're telling me, I like how also too you like downplay. Like I think that they'll lose to Georgia, and like to me that's like a definite loss.
No, not last year. We almost
was it last year though? No, you never know. It's just you especially never know with college football.
South Dakota, Middle Tennessee, Kansas State. Kansas State will be interesting. Memphis is a good program.
Memphis is good. They're like just they got a couple of top 25 votes to start the year.
Yeah,
I think that game's in St. Louis too.
And that will be in the Dome. And then Vandy, which is terrible, but then again, there was times too, which I know this happens with every program, where they play down to their opponent, so you never know. It just kind of will be interesting. LSU, okay. Yeah, and then your schedule gets tough because we know that Georgia, Tennessee, back-to-back L's there. No, I'm kidding. You never know. Luke, what is your prediction?
I thought about it. I'm going 94.
Wow.
94.
That's not going to be great for Ollie Marmol, because if we were talking about job security earlier, that's definitely not going to be good for Ollie.
That's downplaying it too. I think realistically, if like the math checks out, it's like 96 or 97, but I'm going 94. That number's sticking out. We got a really tough September schedule. A lot of contending teams, so a lot of losses are going to be picked up. All right. Thank you for coming on, Brooke. That was way longer than what I told you, I think. So thanks for staying late.
David's like texting me like he's hungry, so that's funny. He'll be fine.
We'll let you guys go get food. So thank you for coming on, and everyone go check out, if you're listening, ESPN Opening Drive 7 to 10 every Monday through Friday, and then also check out, if you're listening to this right now, you have no excuse not to, the Let's Balk About It podcast. Let's Balk About It. With Brooke and the Cardinal Spanish broadcaster, Polo Asensio. Go check that out I think it's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube.
And then on YouTube. Yep. All
right. So, and go follow Brooke on Twitter.
On X.
Thank you for coming on.
All right. Thank you guys.
All right. So once again, thanks to Brooke for coming on the show. That was awesome. We really liked talking to her. Yeah, so let's wrap up the show here. We've got a tough scene of the week to wrap us up.
Nothing
There
too
we
spectacular.
both have some good ones. So yeah, it's been a little bit too. Once again, so Luke, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I gotta pull them up. I have them on my notes on my phone this time. Usually I put them on a document, but I just didn't today. So,
All right,
all right,
I'll
I
start.
got.
Oh, okay, you got
You
it.
got 'em. Yeah.
Want me to go? Okay.
So just go. You go.
Okay.
That was confusing.
So first off, if you're watching the YouTube, you might see this giant ass red rash on my face, and that is because I was wrestling last night at about 11 p.m. and I got thrown over somebody, and the first thing that hit the carpet was my forehead, and so I received a very nice looking floor burn, reminiscent of my turf burns from back when I used to play football. So it feels like a turf burn as well, and it's just been a tough scene, Luke, because
You were
first part of it,
you were
was
wrestling with another guy.
wrestling another guy. But that's
Just for fun, or like for a
we don't
sport or a
judge here.
competition.
I I would say it was for fun, but it really wasn't fun. Basically, what happened was I got flipped.
That just sounds like kind
And
of
then-
gay. Then, if it was supposed to be for fun,
and
but
then
it wasn't fun.
hold on. Then I just held him down because I don't know how to wrestle. And so I just had to outmuscle him for a few seconds just so I could hold him down and be like, "All right, are we done? Are we done? Let's quit. Let's stop this. This sucks. I don't know what I'm doing." And that was it. That was the end of it. But the after effects of the rash, Luke, is what's really hit hardest because first things first, I let my mom know in advance. But as we were walking into church today, she was like, "Holy moly, guacamole!" when she saw it on my face, because it is way worse today than it was yesterday. So yeah, it does look like I just kind of got in a little bit of a
Burned.
street brawl. And then also I
You look
had
like
to
that
go
one guy
to my.
from Home Alone when he gets the iron hit on his face.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, it does look like that. Yeah, I'm trying to cover it up with my hair, obviously. But then I also had a work party that I had to attend afterwards as well, and it was like Harry Potter trying to explain how he got his scar. So that was also pretty good with the coworkers. But yeah, and it honestly it does kind of burn, which I was like a little shocked about. So yeah,
Wow, it
that's
is
my
burn.
tough scene.
A burn burns.
Yeah.
When
Who would have thought?
shocking occurrence.
Who would have thought? So yeah. And then my next one was I tried to hit McDonald's breakfast this morning before going to church because I was just hungry. And basically what happened is I used the curbside pickup thing on the phone, on my app, the McDonald's app. I've never, ever had a problem with this in my entire life. I've been using this for well over a year. Just picking up 2 breakfast sandwiches. I get to the curbside thing. It's not even letting me type in what curbside number I'm in. I was in number 5. And so I was like, all right, this is weird, but I'm sure it's fine. And then before you knew it, Luke, I was sitting there for like 25 minutes and my order just disappeared off my phone. And it looked like it just got deleted. Still got charged, never got the sandwiches, and I wasn't going to be late to church because of $5 worth of sandwiches, so I just had to leave. I didn't go inside and raise hell. And I also didn't go inside because I promised myself a few months ago that I would never, ever go back inside the Washington McDonald's ever again under any circumstances. And that came into my mind today as well when I was contemplating going inside, not doing it. So yeah, I'm just out $5 and was out breakfast sandwiches this morning, which led to my first meal coming at about 4:00. So there's that.
It was probably a work party meal though, which sounds delicious.
It was.
Honestly.
It was delicious.
All right. that rash is just. I know you're kind of trying to hide it with your hair here, but
yeah, I wore bangs
just,
for the episode, the curly bangs, but
bad.
it doesn't really matter. It's so far down. Yeah, it does look like I got somebody just stuck like a hot iron on my forehead. So yeah, good stuff.
All right, I got lots of them. They just accumulated over the course of the past week and a half. My first one is Reds pitcher Lyon Williamson. I think that's how you say his name, Lyon. He was making his MLB debut. I don't remember what day it was, but it was his MLB debut, first day up. You can't make this up. First 2 pitches he thrown in the big leagues both get taken for home runs. The guy hits a leadoff home run on the very first pitch, and while the announcers are like, well, I guess everyone's got their start to a career, first pitch, as they're talking about that, the next guy's second pitch takes him yard. I mean, it's just welcome to the big leagues, pal. Tough scene for him. I think he ended up he had a decent start, but it's funny, especially if he becomes like, a big time pitcher, like actually good. And then it's just like, oh yeah, his first 2 pitches were home runs. Interesting. Kind of funny though. Next tough scene, Orioles announcer. I think a lot of people probably saw this, but he brought up a stat in the pregame show. It wasn't even during the game. It was in the pregame show beforehand. And it was about how the Orioles have struggled in the Tampa Bay Rays field, Tropicana. He's like, they've lost like their last 15 series in this stadium. And it's a testament to how good they've been this year. It's like, well, you know what? We just won the series here. We're going for the sweep today or whatever. But it's taken a while to get to this point. We haven't had good luck here for the past half decade, which they really haven't had good luck for the past half decade in any stadium. So I don't know why it was such a shock, but they suspended him. They're like, for negative comments about the team. And then I think they ended up firing him. That could be wrong. That could be fake, but they definitely suspended him.
Suspended indefinitely. So basically the same thing. Well, not entirely, but suspended indefinitely.
It's just suspended, and he doesn't know when he's coming back.
Exactly.
Which is weird. It was a tough scene. It was a tough look, but I mean, it's one of the owners overstepping their boundaries, I guess. Next tough scene. This is probably the tough scene of the week, the biggest tough scene. It had to do with Colin Cowherd on his morning show, and they were starting to talk about a segment. I don't remember, but they come back from commercial break, and he goes, "Hold on, before we start talking about NFL predictions or whatever," he goes, "I made a little list here. I want to show you guys this list." And it was basically QBs who are not the guy. So it was, I think the title was QBs who, the title on the screen said who can win a Super Bowl, but he made sure to specify. He goes, that's supposed to say can't win a Super Bowl. QBs who can't win a Super Bowl. And he had, guys like, I think Sam Howell was on there. He had Teddy Bridgewater, some of these guys and then Dwayne Haskins popped up, and it's like, okay, he's dead.
Factually correct.
He's not wrong. You're not wrong. But you didn't have to say it, Yeah. Obviously, Dwayne Haskins is not going to win a Super Bowl because he's dead, okay? Why is he on that list? That just seems incredibly insensitive. I remember when he did die and Adam Schefter tweeted out like that one thing. It's like, oh, well, he was struggling to catch on in the NFL, like right after he died, and everyone hit him up and they're like, oh, dude, you know how insensitive that is, Mr. Adam Schefter? This takes the cake. This is so much worse. I don't know how that went through everyone, like the producers, the people who make the graphics, and Colin Cowherd, like on the show, he was looking at the graphic and he was like, oh, that says can. It's supposed to say can't. Like he corrected that, just completely skipped over how Dwayne Haskins was on there. You're not wrong, but you didn't have to say it. It's kind of how I feel about that. Massive tough scene. And then the last one that I have is just Kyler Murray. The picture that came out from the practice, and he's just wearing a sports bra. It's just kind of funny more than anything.
It's I don't know how to describe it. It's like because he's in shape, way better shape than you or I, Luke. Don't get us wrong, but like he's so small and his head is so gigantic, and wearing that sports bra thing, he almost looks fat. He almost looks fat. It's incredible. That's why it's a tough scene. Obviously nonstop throughout the NFL season, all we see is little tiny Kyler Murray memes, and they're funny. Don't get me wrong, but like this is, this was an image. That's all you can say about it. It's an image. It's out there, and it's a tough scene.
Yeah, maybe I'll put it in the YouTube if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's interesting. I think I thought it was photoshopped when I first saw it because I think it was like Butt Crack Sports or something that tweeted it out, and I was like, oh, that's kind of funny, it's a Photoshop. And then I saw it on like Don Cliveman or something. I'm like, oh no, that's a real picture. that is real. You got to be careful nowadays with what's real and what's not. But that was real, and if you know Kyler Murray at all, it just makes it funnier. And now the little memes of like him running around and being small, it's just going to be with a sports bra on too, which is just going to make it better. So, tough scene. And then, really, since the last time we recorded, there hasn't been a lot of stuff that's happened in the sports world, with the exception of Jose Ramirez and Tim Anderson just getting into a boxing match by second base in Cleveland Stadium. It was one of the most bizarre things that's happened. I mean, baseball's had a really fun season with a lot of bizarre things happening, but this was just added to the mix. The Cleveland Guardians radio broadcaster, I believe it was, had one of the coolest calls. I mean, it really made me feel like I was watching a boxing match.
Slide, safe, and in to score is Jimenez. And another hustle double. Right over the bag at first. Now Jose and Anderson square off. They're fighting. They're swinging. Down goes Anderson. Down goes Anderson.
I mean, that guy, he went right into character. He saw Tim Anderson drop the glove, throw up the fist, and he's like, oh, this is my moment right here. And man, I've listened to that call multiple times this week. Just they're fighting, they're swinging, down goes Anderson. It's a chills moment. It's electric, but yeah, that fight was insane. I don't even know if you can call it a fight, but I know you can call it a fight.
No, it's definitely a fight. And yeah. I think maybe my favorite part of the fight, not my favorite, second favorite part of the fight was the repercussions and how Ramirez only got a 3-game suspension because he won, and Tim Anderson got a 6-game suspension because he lost. So if you lose, you get double the suspension. I like that.
Is that actually what happened, or is it?
I don't know what they wrote out.
That's the reason why
about what happened, but that's what I'm going with. He lost at 6. You won. It's only 3. So, and shout out to the umpire for just letting the boys play. So,
I don't know if that's the reason why. I think the umpire just saw him square up, and he was like, I don't want to get hit by a stray punch. And so he made a business decision. It wasn't, I don't think he did it for fun, just to let it play out. I think it was strictly, I'm getting out. I'm getting the hell out of here. I don't want to get punched. And then, of course, the White Sox pitcher, he goes to pull away Jose Ramirez off the pile, and he just basically hugs him from behind. He doesn't pull him at all. And so it's a tough scene for Michael Kopech, too, because Jose Ramirez knocked out as you knock down Tim Anderson with a punch while being restrained by another guy. It just adds to the lore of Jose Ramirez. Cleveland legend. I mean, he's going to be up there with LeBron by the time he retires, I think. Maybe not quite to that level. LeBron won him a championship, but I mean, I think the two biggest fights used to, like when you see old fights in baseball, it's always like somebody charging the mound and fighting a pitcher. Really, the last 2 fights that have happened, the big ones, right at second base. With this one, and then with the Jose Bautista Rougned Odor, where he just punched him right in the face.
Yeah,
no warning or anything. This was kind of cool because like both of them squared up. Like Ramirez started jawing. Tim Anderson's like, "All right, let's go." I mean, it was an insane thing. It was one of those things where you just get home and you check Twitter and you just see everything about it. Another baseball thing that happened, unless you have anything more on the fight.
No,
Cam.
that's all.
Have you seen the Wander Franco stuff at all?
Can't say I have.
Okay, I think we might have sent some stuff to our Twitter group chat, but it's alleged right now. But somebody found they did a deep dive into Wander Franco, and he's basically been dating like a 14-year-old for months now. So, if that's true, tough scene.
Tough scene.
Tough scene for him and for the world, because he's an exciting player, and when that happens, I think that's out of the MLB's hands. That's just law enforcement at that point. I don't know if you remember, there's Felipe Vasquez, a guy for the Pirates, a few years back. He did a very similar thing, and I'm pretty sure he's in jail now. So I'm hoping it's not true, but it looks like it's pretty true. So that's a tough scene. All right, anything else before we wrap up the show? We're skipping wheel spins this week. The interview, it
was awesome.
It went a little longer than we were planning, which is fine. I mean, it was a great interview. I enjoyed it, but no time for wheel spins this week. I think next week will be the college football preview show. So if you remember last year, it was over 2 hours. I don't know if we'll get quite like that again, but we'll be delving in. It'll be all college football, so a complete preview. So get excited for that. And once again, thanks to Brooke for coming on, helping us fill a show here in kind of the midst of or not the midst, but the midst of the sports hiatus. There's just baseball going on right now, so only can be so exciting when your team's the Cardinals. So once again, thanks to her, and we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.